Hey, welcome back to Faith to Impact and Income. Thanks so much for tuning in today. And I'm excited to break down today my strategy for getting booked on stage. So, getting booked on stage is, being in front of an engaged audience is possibly one of the best ways to be able to make an impact and also to make income as well. Because if you do it right. If you do it right, then you can for sure. And so, I've always wanted to speak on stage. I'm not exactly sure where that came from exactly, but I think I guess really what it was is attending different events. I remember, being at different events and seeing people on stage and hearing their messages, their stories, and really resonating with them and feeling the fire that was in their heart. It really, to me, was something I was like, man, this is really, really powerful. And it's something that I want to do. I want to be able to make an impact like that. I didn't realize in the beginning as well, how do you monetize that? How do you go about doing that? And so, there's people that, you write a book and then you go speak everywhere because now a bunch of people hear about my book and then they buy the book and things like that. But like, that's clearly not going to like fund your business is just selling a book. Like you have to have more than that. And so that's why, you do have to do it right. But, so I went back to this where I have attended some events and I really like felt this desire to speak on stage, but like, what does that look like? And first of all, maybe that's a little bit weird. I think, I guess it's really not as an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, you're very, passionate about that. But I was just thinking about how my wife, Amy, is just like, what? Like, I never want to do that. I don't like speaking in front of people. And so anyways, but I had this desire to do that. And so went through a program called Stage to Scale. Some of you may have heard of that from Pete Vargas. And it was a really awesome program to really understand and create a signature talk. So really creating one talk that you can speak, across the world at various stages, and use it on podcasts and all that type of stuff. And so they went through that. And then they also talked about how do you have like a scaling offer as well so that you can, grow your business at the same time. And so I went through this program and it was really cool to learn that. And I got a lot of good, experience of crafting a talk and figuring out how do you speak on stage and what type of stories do you do and how do you structure it all and all that stuff. And so it was really cool to do that. And I, at the time, was doing more around parenting. So I was creating a program for parents that was a course that they could go through. And so my thought was, okay, I'm going to have this course and I have this signature talk. So now I can go and speak. And so we get towards the end of the program and I'm starting to think of, okay, I need to start getting booked on stages, right? That's what we've talked about through this. And in the program, they broke down this entire massive diagram of how they do it. And so they've got a massive team and they're doing this all the time. And so of course that's going to be different than what it looks like for me, but it was like, there's probably like 50 different steps in this stage. It was like, okay, you got to reach out via social media or via email to this person. And then you got to send a follow-up and then do all the, like, there was just so many different steps to do that. It was kind of insane. There's this massive spreadsheet that you go through, but anyways, it's like, well, hey, this is valuable. So I should do this. And again, they didn't necessarily recommend doing all 50 steps, but they did have, kind of a system for doing that. And so I started thinking, okay, this would be really good. So I start going down that route and do some research and figure out, well, what are some of the podcasts, some of the different stages I could get on. And so I start doing some research and putting those down. And I remember, having a list of probably 10 to 15 different podcasts that I could go and reach out to. So I started reaching out to them and realized that there's a little bit, it's a little bit of a different challenge than it may seem. It kind of seems like, oh, you just like send an email to someone and, hey, can I get in your podcast? Okay, cool. And like, and they mentioned, well, you want to lead with value. You want to show like how this would be valuable for them and their audience and make it a win-win and different things like that. But I remember I finally, one of the things that I did is like, I think it'd be really cool to have just a video that I can create so that I don't always have to kind of explain the same thing to everybody. I can have a video that really explains what I do and what this is all about, and then send people to that. And then they can go check that out. And if it sounds interesting, then great, now we can do it. And so I remember remember finding a podcast that I think a friend from the program had, run into, and there was some Facebook group around, podcast hosts and guests and things like that. And so it was a podcast that was about marriage and stuff like that. And so, the hosts, they were a couple, and they had some friends, or they had some kids. I'm sure that they were friends too, but they had like 4 kids, and so they heard, and we kind of got connected. And so it's through someone else that we got connected. And then I sent them this video, and they watched it, and like they just were like, oh man, this sounds perfect, like this just would be perfect. And so let's do this, let's do the podcast. And so I'm just like telling Amy about this. Hey, I got like my first booked podcast, and I'm super excited. And again, it's towards the end of this program that I was going through with the Stage to Scale to do that. And so it was kind of towards the end of that where the group was going away and things. And so anyways, I remember telling people, hey guys, I got booked on this podcast. And so then we did the recording, and we were down in San Diego at the time. And I remember like we had to get back from the beach, and there's a little bit of stress like getting on, but it was just like doing that podcast was so fun, and I felt so alive, and it was just like so natural, and it was amazing. It was the first one ever. And so it was just super cool, and I was very grateful for how that went. And I just felt really awesome afterwards, like just telling Amy that was so much fun, and I could just see that this was going to be really awesome. And so, around that time too, I was, I had created my course, and I created the funnel, and created all the things that I needed so that they could, if it was someone from a podcast, they could get opted into a free like 5-day video series that they could go watch. And so that was part of, I think it was like the parents like recharge kit or something like that. And so that's what they had put on the show notes, and we told people about during the podcast. And so I actually don't even know if it was on the show notes. I'm not sure if I actually looked at that, but I know it was, we did talk about it at the end of the podcast. And so here I am thinking, hey, this is like, I'm on this podcast, and I'm just super excited for all of the leads and all of the sales that are going to be coming through because of this, because that's what I've been taught. It's like, okay, cool, like getting on stage, and that's how it's going to grow your business. And so I remember watching, the email system I was using and that type of stuff, and looking through and seeing, hey, what's going on, and are things working, and that type of stuff, because essentially nothing happened. Nothing really happened because of that podcast. And I remember just feeling really sad at the time, because I just felt like, well, this is what the whole point of this was, is so we can get on stage, and then we can have people come to us that are interested. And so I, remember going to the group and, made a post, made a video, asking for some guidance, because, just telling the whole story. I remember I actually was like crying during the video, and sitting there like next to our computer, and just like really in the kind of just a sad state. And throughout this like coaching program, I was making videos and very upbeat and positive about things, and everyone was just like grateful for kind of the light that I was sharing in there. And so it was a very different type of, scenario, where I just like, I'm sitting there just crying, and just really feeling frustrated, because I don't know, like I put in all this work, and then nothing happened. And so, I had some responses there. Well, talking about, hey, well, maybe the offer, like the free like offer that you have isn't great. Like maybe there's some things you can change there. And also maybe the podcast isn't huge. And to be honest, it probably didn't have a huge following at that point. But anyways, it was one of those things that I was like, okay, so I see value in it. But it's like this. And so I realized that maybe what I need to do is get on a bigger podcast, right? I mean, obviously fix some of the funnel and that type of stuff, but I didn't really see much like traffic coming at all. And so it's like, well, probably it was just like the podcast. And so I ended up going and looking, okay, so here's these others that I've already found, and continued to do more research, and started reaching out to them. But what I noticed is that they ended up having like 6 months already done, right? And so it wasn't going to be 6 months before they were going to do more recording, and before they would start doing other things. And so I just realized at that point, especially with some of the bigger podcasts, that I was like, wow, this is definitely a long-term strategy. This is something that you can't like say, oh, cool, like this month I'm going to get on a stage. Now that can happen but it's more of a long-term thing. You really got to look out further. And so for me, like, it really didn't, I guess it did kind of turn me away a little bit from just focusing on that because of the timeline. It's like it's such a longer game, which again I think is good, and I'm excited to do more of that in the future. But kind of like with Stage to Scale, I don't have a massive company that I have all these people that are helping figure out, oh, who could we go speak with, and then reaching out to them and following up, like all of that type of stuff. And I was just like, I don't, for me personally, it's like, it's not exactly, I don't think it fits totally with what I was doing. But I did put on my first summit, several months after that podcast. And I remember just the relationships that I built so quickly with people was so cool. Being able to highlight them and to provide value to them first was really, really cool. And thinking about it afterwards, like, I think the people, I haven't interviewed a lot of people that necessarily have a podcast, but to me, if I was in their shoes and someone offered me to get in front of a live audience, to get on a podcast and all this stuff, that it would be very natural afterwards for me to want to give back. If I did have a podcast, I'm like, okay, hey, you came on, I was able to come onto your event. Hey, do you want to come on mine? Like, I might even ask them, hey, would you want to come on my, podcast? But it's also, hey, as that host of them asking, hey, would you like to, like, are you looking for hosts then that, or looking for guests on your podcast? That would be totally a natural thing. And so that's why for me, like, my strategy, now we're finally getting to it, the big backstory. So hopefully, you enjoyed kind of some of the details there of just understanding that, because it is important to know that. But like, really, my long-term strategy for this is to really, like, have people come to me to be able to get booked on stage. Like, and I feel like that's truly the best way to be able to, like, really get on stage, because there's a lot of people, like, that they'll be asked to go on stage, like, just at some point. So like my coach, Josh, who I love, he talked about how, like, I think it was last year, that he had people asking him about being at events like almost every week, that he had people coming constantly to him about that. And so it got me thinking, I'm like, I think that that's really the strategy that I want to do. Now, sure, maybe at some point I do a little bit more to say, okay, let's focus on this and get in front of these different audiences. But I just feel like that, for me, I'm in this kind of growth phase of, I need to continue to provide value, continue to grow, to continue to do these things. And then over time, people will come. And to be honest, I actually already had someone like a couple of weeks ago come and say, hey, someone's doing a summit. They were looking for someone else, like, and I thought of you immediately. And so just that type of stuff that I just know long-term, again, talking about yesterday a little bit too, that long-term, if you continue just to show up and continue to provide value, continue to make a difference in people's lives, that people will come to you. It does take time. And so that's why I'm excited for, essentially, I guess, to essentially break down my strategy for getting booked on stage is to, number one, do my monthly summits. So doing monthly summits where I'm asking others to come on, where I'm going to help them get in front of a live audience. I'm going to show them on my podcast. I'm going to also, allow them to bring in some affiliate revenue as well. And then also to, have a place where people can go to see past speakers as well, where in the membership, they'll have their video will be there so people can continue to hear from them. Again, podcast is the same type of thing, but just like really lead with value and do that. And I just know that over time, there's going to be connections there that will eventually lead to me getting booked on stage but then it's kind of like, I don't have to spend years and all of this time all the time. And in the future, again, I plan to have someone that will be doing that can reach out and really find those stages that I can go on. But I feel like right now, why not focus on providing value and giving to all these other amazing entrepreneurs, continue to grow my business in that way. And then I don't really have to spend all that time right now looking for stages, trying to get on stages and that type of stuff. I'm just going to continue to provide value to others. and then I will be able to get booked on stage. Like it will just kind of naturally happen. And so I'm really excited for that. And I know that that's going to be super cool. And again, like even with that, I guess, is like as I bring on other podcast hosts and things like that, it's a natural conversation that I bring them to my event. I do all these amazing things for them. And then, if I feel like, hey, I'm ready to go, speak on some other stages, then I feel like it'd be a natural thing for me to easily just reach out and say, hey, are you looking to, have, guests on? I'd love to be on at some point. And the fact that I've already done that for them, it's going to be so much more natural. And so I'm excited for that because again, it just, I guess to me, it's kind of like a very efficient way to be able to do that. Now, it doesn't allow me to get on stages right now, but again, I'm not focusing on that, but it's a way for me to do it in the future in a much easier way without having to, do all this reach out and really continue to do that. But naturally, as people continue to, hear about this podcast, as people to, come to the different events and things like that, then that's something that naturally is going to occur. And so I'm just excited for that because then it doesn't, again, it doesn't require me to spend all day, every day reaching out and doing that. And so anyways, excited for that strategy. And it's certainly, it's totally up to you as far as what you want to do. This to me just feels right. And it's something I'm just excited to continue to do. But for you, maybe it's a little bit different and that's totally fine. But it is, one way to be able to get booked on stage is just to continue to be there, continue to provide value, to continue to give to others, especially those that, you may want to work with as well. That's a great way to do it. And so that's why I love, the summit model as well, is because it's a fun way to get in front of other people, to get to know them, really build a relationship pretty quickly with some other, influencers or entrepreneurs that you want to work with. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. And I'm super excited to do that. So I thought I'd break that down for you so that you could see that. And just how, again, another way to be efficient in how you do things too, because I'm excited to get on stage and I know that will happen, whether that's podcasts or other stages and things. But I just need to be patient with that too. And so I know that being patient with it and just letting it come as it goes, that it'll work out. It's going to work out and it's going to be a lot of fun. So appreciate you tuning in today. Please, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff.